Hi, I'm Smiley. Today, I'm going to be walking through my process on creating this OC. Now, this isn't exactly a tutorial, it's more like a draw with me kind of thing. Since it's a Lunar New Year special video, I wanted to do something fun. Last year, I made a Lunar New Year OC for the Year of the Snake. And this year, it's the Year of the Horse. And to make it even more special, I'll be exploring Mongolian culture while creating this OC. Grab your drawing supplies, get comfy, and let's draw together. Because this one is going to be a long and fun ride. Enjoy! To start, I opened a board on ME LNY where I could jot down any ideas and collect photos for reference. I use a horse photo as my base and I built everything from there. I choose to create a traveler and a warrior OC, buying traditional armor and horses to match the theme. I also link the notes and the clothing that I want to use, along with helpful references to link. I used real-life photos for the face. Finding a good face reference was difficult because I kept going across the AI-generated ones, which of course, I wanted to avoid since they are not real and isn't historically accurate. I include specific face features I wanted to apply, such as skin, tone palettes, and other details. For color palette, I prefer to plan it before drawing so you could get a clear vision overall. I went with the earthy tone along with red and gold to symbolize prosperity. I also added the OC story description on the side. This helped me gather my ideas and make sure everything worked well together. I organized the story into categories and roles to keep it structured. I really want to include the theme bravery and friendship as he experienced hard life as a warrior, along with a bit of trauma because, let's be honest, I can't let this OC have a peaceful life. Next up is actually designing the base. I started to sketch out the silhouette to get the general idea of what I'm going for. I want to sketch out and plan the outfit beforehand so I can have a smooth drawing process. Because if I don't have a plan, I will suffer. My layers will be messy and my motivation will disappear. So we plan. Now for outlining this drawing, I went straight from sketch to line art to save time. But since this OC is a warrior, I want to prepare his outfit underneath, in case I ever want to draw him without armor. So, for his casual fit, I use traditional clothing called deal, which is commonly worn by Mongolian men and women. This outfit is a long robe tied with a stash, designed to protect against strong winds, cold weather, and long horseback journeys, which is very based on Mongolian OC inspired. I also made him wear a traditional fur hat because this setting is going to be cold, and historically. Mongolians wear fur-lined hats for warmth and protection during the harsh winters. But for his casual fit, I wanted to make him hold his hat since I want to show his hair. I did have a clear idea for his hairstyle, but one thing I didn't know is that I wanted to make it long. Yes, I have an obsession with men having long hair. It adds drama, it adds lore, and it adds emotional weight. But I didn't want to make him look exactly the same like my other male OC, so I drew his hair more on the side part with one long braid, just to make his hair a little bit more interesting. Now adding the base color. I want to add earthy color palette with his warm skin tone and dark brown hair. I want him to feel this connection to the land, horses, and the nomadic lifestyle. For his clothing, I kept it red, gold, and brown. In Mongolian culture, red is often symbolized strength and good fortune, while gold represents wealth and power. So yes, this color choices was intentional and culturally inspired. But as I was coloring him, he started to look like a certain someone. I want to stay original and not look like someone else's character. Now for the fun part. coloring filters. I wanted to play around with the colors because he was looking a little bit basic.
Why does Serizawa call you baby girl?
Mom, do me a favor. How about we stop talking for a little while?
And we don't want that. I want to make the color feel more cinematic and atmospheric. I was fixing his face because it felt off, but after a quick glow up and some adjustments, everything started to turn out pretty well. He started to look like he actually belonged to his world instead of accidentally wandering into another fandom. Then it's time for rendering, aka the most tedious part of the drawing process. This is where artists enter the thrive or emotional pass away. And just because I was lazy but efficient, I used my favorite trick. I added a new layer, set it to multiply, open the special icon, and select lasso fill. Then I block shadow, basically guessing where the shadow goes because clothings are unpredictable. After placing the shadows, I use a blending brush. Hint hint, my brushes are pinned on all my socials and blended everything for a smoother look. This part is very, very satisfying. Then I clean up the whole drawing using an outline brush to sharpen everything. I redefine his silhouette and his face. I want his eyes to be dark and sharper, like he's been through hardship, battles, and long journeys across the open land. I also added these yummy textures to his face, especially with a saturated red blush, because cold weather equals red cheeks. And we love the realism. Which is why it's important to keep in mind when designing your OC is to try to understand how the surrounding functions work. Because if you want realism, those details add so much to the character. Whether the weather affects the skin, clothing, posture, and personality, like I did with the Mongolian culture, is deeply shaped by the land, climate, and the nomadic lifestyle. After touching it up with the texture brush to finalize everything, his casual outfit is done. He looks warm, strong, serving looks, and he's ready to enter a battle or a quiet moment under the beautiful sky. Now it's time for designing the big moment, drawing his actual armor. Using the base drawing outfit that I just made, I simply drew over his battle outfit. This allows me to design both his casual and combat looks without starting from scratch. I did lots of research and gathered references to make sure the armor stayed historically accurate. This was a perfect opportunity to practice drawing armor properly instead of just guessing. And I must inform you guys, this process was tedious. I used multiple references so I could understand how the armor should actually function and look like. My number one tip is the more reference you have, the better. I plan to recreate this one reference, but add my own fantasy twist, so I wasn't just copying it one-on-one. Designing an OC takes time and creativity, and it's important to think about the surroundings, environment, and the conditions that your OC live in. A useful tip when rendering and trying to save time: if you have repetitive patterns, render one piece and copy and paste it instead of rendering every single part. I use this method when designing small details like the belt or around the armor. This not only saves time, but it also makes the design more detailed and consistent. The goal for this OC was to make it highly detailed, of course, because I love realistic and highly detailed characters, especially from you guys. And right here, do you really think I'm going to render every single piece of metal on this? This armor is absolutely not. I do not have the time or patience to spend my life rendering on individual metal plates. Instead, I render one section. As I researched, Mongolian armor was often laminar armor. You get what I'm saying. which is made from a small piece of metal and laced up together. This creates a repeating pattern. I render one plate and use a tile effect to repeat it, and copy and paste it across the armor. Then I liquefy to fix the structure of the body, and just like that, the armor looks detailed and complex without destroying my own sanity. Even though the armor is tedious to render, it is satisfying. All these metal parts come together is really cool. It's also slightly easier to render than rendering clothes because it's mostly solid 3D shapes with no complicated fabric wrinkles, just clean overlapping shadows. This makes my rendering process much simpler by focusing on where the shadows overlap. Once I finish rendering the armor, I'm proud to say I officially finished the whole design of the full body. But it doesn't end here. Since this is a Lunar New Year special OC, I had to add the horse element. Drawing a horse, as he's a strong warrior, what better companion could he be than a horse? Mongolian warriors were famous for their horsemanship. They relied on horse for speed, endurance, and survival warfare. This horse part made it essential for the character. One of the main reasons why I chose Mongolian culture for this OC. Now, I'm not gonna lie, I never drawn a horse before, and this horse was rough. I know. The hair was weird, the structure was off. Overall, it's not giving this majestic. It was more like a background prop. I'll admit it, I was a little lazy with this one at first because I originally planned it just to be a background element. But after studying horse anatomy and structure, I started to understand how horses actually look and move. I adjusted the structure by using the liquefy and fixed all the colors. I made the shadows darker and more defined, and suddenly, the horse looks more like a horse. Wow, I should just give a pat on my back. Progress, I really like the final colors, especially the lighter body with darker hair. It's a nice contrast and depth. Now, one of the biggest questions people have when designing OC is how to add details. Sometimes the OC can look plain or unfinished. That's where the patterns come in. Patterns add uniqueness, texture, and visual interest. They help fill spaces and make design feel more intentional. You don't have to use patterns, but they're extremely helpful when something feels like it's missing. So that's just a quick tip. After designing the full body, it's finally time to focus on his face. And honestly, this is one of my favorite parts. When designing an OC, the face is everything. It shows personality, emotion, culture, storytelling, and it's just really fun to play around with. You could change one eyebrow and suddenly he has a new attitude. The vibe I wanted to go for was a tough, battle-hardened warrior. Someone who has been through hardship but still stands strong. I drew him in this casual outfit and gave him an angry expression. I made sure his eyebrows were firm, thick, and sharply angled because eyebrows can carry emotions. Like, they do half of the work. For coloring, I use a soft brush with the base colors. Then I added some light shadow to add some depth. I wasn't planning to fully render at first, just a rough rendering to get the general idea and mood. When it came to rendering his face, I used a very saturated reddish-orange tone for his cheeks because it's in cold environment, so that equals red cheeks. I want to keep it as realistic as possible, so for his face you can instantly tell his story without needing any words. But this is where the things get interesting. With coloring, I used a soft brush and started with the base color, then add light shadows to add some depth. As I was adding some shadows, I wasn't fully prepared to render at first. Just rough render to get the general idea and mood. With the rendering, redoing, adjusting the face shape and colors over and over until it looks right. I went through full emotional roller coaster when drawing his face. The motivation I had was through the roof. Like, yes, I got this, but my drawing skills were... So I struggle a lot, especially with the structure. Something kept it looking off and I couldn't tell what it was. I was definitely hitting a art block. The torture that every artist almost experiences. I felt confused, blind, and honestly just staring at my screen like it was personally offended me. So I kept rendering, redoing, adjusting the face shape, tweaking the colors over and over until it finally started to look right. It was one of those moments where you were like, we are getting there very, very slowly. I plan to finalize the drawing using color overlay effect to add more contrast. I added darker purple tones over the red base to keep a warm color scheme, kinda like a sunset lighting. I made the fade go from dark to light vertically to add deeper and a serious mode, because this man has lore. And after all that, I thought I was really done. Until I picked up this drawing back the next day. Because sometimes you just need to take a break. And making major adjustments, stepping away, and coming back with fresh eyes, I finally completed it. And honestly, I was really impressed how much of it improved. Just the face looks more structured, sharper, and perfectly matched his character. Now it's time to draw the side profile. I used the facial guidelines from the front view to help match the proportion on the side view. But, yeah, that did not work out. At all. Oh my god. So let me just pull out my handy dandy liquefied tool to fix this really quick. But it's okay since it's just a guideline. I merely need to help out with the outline. So I just drew a cleaner and sharper look version on top. I don't usually draw side profiles, but I really want to draw it just to show off his facial features from the side. I used a sketchy brush for a rough textured look and drew his nose bridge more arched. I also made his eyes slightly puffier to reflect the Mongolian features and gave him thick, bushy, arched eyebrows for a more serious expression. Next, I decided to photo bash a little from the front view artwork, cutting and adjusting and fitting it to the side view. I took his fur hat and placed it on top of the side profile to keep everything consistent. Then I drew his hair using a soft brush, adding more details, fixed his fur hood, and cleaned up everything so it looked more polished. After that, I added shadows and saturated cheeks. I placed a multiply layer on top and used a reddish orange tone for the blush. I kept layering the details, deepening the shadows, and adding highlights for more depth. And honestly, I was loving the side view, turning out like it was actually so yummy. Once I finalized the rendering, I added more highlights to outline to redefine everything for a sharper look. And there we have it, all finished. Once I finished drawing both full bodies outfits, the headshots, the side view, I placed everything onto the OC sheet and put it all together. I aligned everything carefully so it fits nicely on the canvas and looked clean and organized. Once that was done, I started to label everything, identify each part, and that way it will be easier to understand. I used my research and my OC storyboard as a reference while labeling. And honestly, this part took quite a while to figure it out. After labeling all the parts, I use a line tool to connect the text to the item. I usually like doing this because it makes the OC sheet more engaging and interactive. It just feels more fun and to look at and explore. Then after I finished the labels, I placed the color palette on the side and decorated the sheet with multiple color palettes I used throughout the artwork. Now that everything was placed, it's time to decorate it, turning this OC sheet into a lively atmospheric piece. I added backgrounds and decided to name him Tamur Batong. I hope I said it right, after researching common Mongolian male names. I decorated the sheet using overlayers, adding trees, snow, stars, and other details to complete the OC sheet and bringing the whole character to life. After that, I moved to the OC bio. I used the artwork that I already drew and upscale it for the picture on the side. This is where I wrote her description, story, origin, and bunch of other details. I just copy and paste the story I already had written on the storyboard and expanded on it. I included all kinds of lore, his backstory, internal conflict, roles, Lunar New Year aspect, and his growth path. I really wanted to make it complex because I love OC with deep lore and emotional layers. The more depth, the better. Here's a rant about this OC. Alright, this is Tamur Batong, aka the Iron Hero. Born in the year of the horse, a protector, a guide, a man who believed strength and was meant to serve, not to destroy. And then something went wrong. On the lunar eclipse, his camel carving was ambushed. Steel crashes, snow turned red, despite everything he had was something very... You know what? Never mind. It's a long story. It's best to save it for those who's interested to read this. I would love to talk about more OCs later. And here's the finished results of this OC. Starting a Lunar New Year series where I get to explore different culture with you guys. But yep, that's it. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you learned something, got inspired, or just had fun watching me nerd out over Mongolian armor and horses. But yeah, until next time, goobers, bye-bye.